The Trump administration has unleashed a sweeping federal directive, demanding that states strip all references to gender ideology, including transgender identity and related content, from federally funded sex education materials, or risk losing substantial grants. This effort, centered on the Personal Responsibility Education Program, PrEP, carries significant consequences. States, territories, and the District of Columbia were given 60 days to comply, under threat of withholding or terminating funding. Over 40 states are affected by the directive, with California already losing its PrEP grant after refusing to remove such content. The PrEP program provides roughly $81 million in annual funding aimed at delivering sex education, particularly on preventing teen pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections. It focuses on vulnerable populations, such as LGBTQ+ youth, teens in foster care, homeless or incarcerated youth, and those in high-risk environments. States were warned to eliminate terms like transgender, discussions of pronouns, and broader references to gender identity and sexual orientation. California was the first to bear the consequences. The Trump administration revoked a $12 million PrEP grant after the state declined to alter its curriculum, which includes medically accurate and legally mandated inclusive content. California officials defended their materials as previously approved, compliant with state law, including the California Healthy Youth Act, and essential to LGBTQ+ youth well-being. Nebraska faces a potential loss of $764,000 if it doesn't comply by the October 27 deadline. Many other states, ranging from Alabama to Wisconsin, received similar warnings. In Vermont, the health department expressed concern over losing $670,000, particularly criticizing the federal directive's disregard for medically accepted language and inclusive public health models that reflect the needs of LGBTQ+ youth. In Illinois, authorities were warned that up to $4 million could be withheld unless materials mentioning gender identity and expression were removed. Illinois' PrEP curriculum covers topics such as consent, anatomy, puberty, sexual orientation, and gender identity. Critics labeled the directive a cruel attack on transgender youth. At the national level, HHS Acting Assistant Secretary Andrew Gradison emphasized that federal funds must align with Congress's intent, not what he described as leftist ideological agendas. He asserted that gender ideology falls outside the scope of PrEP's statutory purpose and that any associated expenditures are not allowable, reasonable, or allocable to the grant. This move forms part of a broader agenda under executive authority. One executive order signed January 20, 2025, titled, Defending Women from Gender Ideology Extremism and Restoring Biological Truth to the Federal Government, mandates federal recognition of gender as a fixed binary, removes references to gender, ends funding for gender-affirming care, and rescinds acknowledgments of gender diversity in federal documents. Another January 29 order, ending radical indoctrination in K-12 schooling, bans gender ideology and critical race theory in schools, authorizing funding revocations and even criminal prosecution for educators who facilitate transgender minors' transition, including use of pronouns or access to appropriate restrooms. Similarly, on January 28, the administration issued Protecting Children from Chemical and Surgical Mutilation, which bars federal funding and insurance support for gender-affirming care for minors. Critics argue that the directive to purge gender-inclusive content from sex education not only undermines medical accuracy but also jeopardizes the mental health and safety of LGBTQ+ youth. Research consistently shows that inclusive sex ed fosters better outcomes, reducing stigma and promoting support among vulnerable students. Legal challenges are already forming. Connecticut Attorney General William Tong denounced the funding threats as completely unhinged and signaled plans to pursue legal action. Meanwhile, education advocates and organizations such as SECUS emphasize the essential role PrEP plays in training educators and delivering evidence-based lessons to marginalized youth. On the ground, some school districts and states are resisting. For example, in Virginia, Arlington and Fairfax school districts have sued the federal government over threats of defunding due to their transgender-inclusive policies, including allowing students to use facilities consistent with their gender identity. Those disputes alone could affect nearly $190 million in funding. Denver Public Schools also pushed back against Title IX-based enforcement of gender-neutral restroom policies, facing possible loss of $10 million annually, and questioned the legal foundation of the federal investigations. This unfolding conflict reflects a broader national struggle over gender, education, and federal influence. The administration's strategy to use financial leverage to enforce ideological conformity signals a major shift in the role of federal oversight in shaping curriculum. If upheld, it could reshape sex education across the nation, narrowing discussions on gender, marginalizing LGBTQ+ students, and redefining federal-state tensions over educational content. Opposition continues to mobilize across legal and political fronts, suggesting a protracted and contentious battle ahead.